Hello, good morning and welcome everyone to our very first virtual Bristol Life Business Club. I'm Greg from Media Clash and we hope that you, your loved ones and your teams are safe in these bewildering times. It's been 103 days since the first UK death from COVID-19 was recorded. 103 days in which our ways of living and working in Bristol have been turned upside down. Times when we can't work, at least not in the same way as previously. Times when we don't know when we can return and what a return will look like. And times when we could all do with hearing others' experiences and thoughts. And that's the idea of these regular Tales from the Lockdown, where we will hear from disparate sectors of Bristol life on how we are responding personally, professionally, and managerially. And perhaps also some thoughts about how the lockdown, COVID-19, might change us personally, but also our businesses and our city on the other side. If you like this one, please join us for subsequent ones in the series. If you don't, then perhaps let us know, because we want to make sure we're improving these and adding value and at least interest to as many of you as we can. It's been really touching during this awful time, the way that so many Bristol businesses and people have responded so magnificently. It really is the case that people have created clever ways of supporting and helping where they can. For Bristol Life, we've been very keen to promote this, to share the good that people do via the hashtag Bristol Together, which we're pushing through our social media channels and also through our weekly email newsletters. If your businesses, your contacts, your friends, your families, your social groups are doing good things, please share those. We could all be doing with being buoyed up with the good that people do. On to our speakers today. We'll be hearing from, and it'll be in this order, Julian Cook of the commercial property company Burston Cook, Phoebe Ruxton of food charity FareShare, and Alastair Currie of multiple events and entertainment businesses such as Fosters Catering, CMC and SLX, the AV company. I'll run short interviews, 8 to 10 minutes, something like that, with each of them. And then please send your Q&As. If you look at the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, send those through. We will cover as many as we can, but experience suggests that we won't get through all of them, so bear with us. So you know, a couple other things. We've got over 120 people on this inaugural virtual business club, which is, frankly, it's far in excess of what we had hoped. So thank you for your time. Thank you also to Bevan Britton, who are the sponsors of the, dare I say, real Bristol Life Business Club, and will be again, of course, when we revert. Whenever that is, who knows? First up, if I could bring in Julian Cook. Julian, want to unmute yourself? There we are. Hello, and how are you this morning?
Morning, Greg.
How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you, on this sunny morning.
Yeah, well, tell us, oh, you're there you go, you're back on again. Tell us a little bit about what Burston Cook have actually been able to do during this lockdown period and how it's affected your business.
Well, we were fortunate enough to get a little bit of an insight probably a week or two before others, because we were getting phone calls from clients. So we put in place a number of the procedures that we felt we might need to do. So we were quite well placed to enter into lockdown very swiftly, which we did a couple of days prior to actually the required date. The whole team have been working closely together through regular Zoom meetings, and we have our own WhatsApp chat. So we're talking every day on that where we can. And we have managed to, we made the first, actually the point was, we realized that whilst it was pretty awesome for us to be experiencing this, it was an immediate seizure of business. As far as we were concerned, the phones just died, and we couldn't show people property. There weren't many inquiries for properties, etc. Whilst people sort of tried to get their heads around what they had to do as businesses themselves. So we immediately reached out to all of our clients and contacts to say, look, we're still here when you need us. And we have maintained that contact with our clients throughout the last couple of months. So working as a team.
If I could just interrupt you, have you actually been able to do business, to transact, as well as the communications you've been talking about?
There's been little business to do. I mean, the business literally did stop overnight. Businesses have been not looking to expand into new offices or relocate or rationalize. They've literally been focusing on getting through this situation, negotiating contracts and coming to us regarding their rentals and how they can get rental holidays, or landlords talking to us about how they can help tenants. There has been a really good team effort between landlords and tenants, actually, which is rather interesting, much more than you would expect, because they all realise that they need to help one another. You get one or two that slip through the net, but generally speaking, they've been working together very well to help each other get through this difficult time. But no, in terms of transacting business, I regret to say that we don't expect any new transactions of any note this month, next month, or the month after. We tend to work a minimum of 3 months in arrears. So we were finishing off work that we've been negotiating for the few months prior. And then as of lockdown, pretty well, no new business.
And presumably you've sort of consciously been given a lot of free advice, because it is your business expertise, as other professional services are on this call. The one thing that you have is insight and advice. But what advice can you give to people considering their commercial property portfolio, or the place in which they operate or are looking to sell?
The advice initially for both tenants and landlords was to not make any knee-jerk decisions, because even to this moment things are evolving. There are new government initiatives evolving every couple of weeks and so on, which can benefit some businesses and so on. So it was a very much a question of calm down, just take the time to see what the impact is on your business, and most businesses will know that it's going to impact upon their profits and so on and so forth. But just take it slowly. Don't react too quickly. And then as things have emerged and we've obtained more information from the government in terms of furlough and in terms of bounce back loans and other loans, etc., that's given people time to also see where the hell their businesses are going. So at that time, we could then take a more considered and informed view in advising tenants or landlords. And every case is different. Some tenants are affected differently, and people think of landlords as perhaps being rackman landlords, but that's not the case. They're not necessarily, because of the lack of investment returns over the last 15 to 20 years. A lot of people, when they retire, buy a buy-to-let or a small shop and they let it out. So these are landlords that really do need that income. It's not just big institutional landlords or funds or propcos from London. So every scenario is different, Greg.
Yeah. What do you make of the point that, because we are all, like we are doing now, getting used to working from home, we're communicating through Zoom, through Teams and so on, that the whole role of the office will change, and therefore commercial portfolio and commercial property will change? Is that a threat, because you will see a gradual emptying out and an exiting? We know of some companies that are already considering exiting their offices, or an opportunity as larger companies come into the city and others downsize to smaller properties because they have employees at home? How do you regard that landscape changing?
That's a really good question, because it's obviously something that we've thought about, and the directors at Burston Cook have considered, not just in our own, in terms of our own opinion, but also in our many conversations we've had with tenants and with landlords and with some of our competing firms, who actually in the commercial world we all get on pretty well actually, and we share quite a lot of knowledge and information to help one another give good advice to our clients. So we feel that this needs to be looked at both from the employee's perspective and the employer's perspective. And the feedback we've been getting from employees is that yes, it can work, but many employees don't have a facility to work at home effectively. Others that do might have other distractions. They often lack motivation. There is certainly a feeling of isolation. The team spirit tends to fade. And there's been a pretty well unanimously, people are saying we want to get back into an office environment. That's from the employees' perspective. As far as the employers, the benefit you might consider would be the saving in costs on rent and so on and so forth. But if you look at the owning and running a business ourselves, the cost of the office is actually a fairly small cost in terms of the overall cost of running a business. And when you balance that with the efficiencies and inefficiencies that are lost perhaps from working from home, the employers are generally still very much wanting to work from an office environment. Some companies, there may be some efficiencies in reducing the size now that they know that they can work from home. Going forward, we think that as it stands at the moment, there might be a little more flexibility where people, now that they can work from home, if they've got a meeting on one side of the town at 11 a.m., they don't come straight in, they work remotely. That kind of thing makes an awful lot of sense, but still have an office to work from most of the time.
So I suppose it's very difficult for any of us to really interpret what might be even the midterm trends, because as of now, we're all thinking about social distancing. We in our business at Media Clash, we had a survey about what people were thinking about potentially coming back to work. And it was a combination, as you said, of excitement, of team spirit and so on, but also just concern, because people are feeling quite vulnerable at the moment. That may not be the case in a few weeks, few months' time, as we gradually get used to the whatever stipulations that are put in place and how we all accommodate our teams within our office places. That trend will emerge. And I want to come back to that, those longer term trends later. But I just want to ask you a final question, really. What's your current level of expectation for this year? Have you any degrees of confidence? Are you just completely hunkering down and writing the year off?
I think you always, when you run a business, look at the worst, prepare for the worst case scenario. And if it is better than that, then you are well prepared and it doesn't catch you unawares. I think there will be a slow return to activity in the third quarter, fourth quarter. This is as we stand at the moment. I think certain sectors of our business will clearly be impacted, like the hospitality side, restaurants, pubs, and so on and so forth. Offices, I think, will return quite normally once the spacing issues are overcome and people feel more comfortable. But I would say that as a business, I think you're asking me as to how we're planning our business. We're thinking that this financial year is going to be very, very testing and very minimal profit. And I'm not embarrassed to say that, because this is not a result of a weak business. We have an excellent capital account and it's run very well, so we'll get through it and come out the other side. And I think we will then probably be in a recession, which we've been through on numerous times previously, and we are well prepared for that. But it's going to be difficult for us, as it will be for many, many businesses, I'm afraid.
And to your point there about there's no sort of embarrassment about saying that, I think that's one of the effects of this awful coronavirus, is that it sort of strips away an element of pretense. We just have to be honest. These are really tough times. We've got to try individually and collectively to find our way through it. Julian, I'll come back to you in a moment. Thank you. If I could bring in Phoebe Ruxton from FareShare at this point. Hi, Phoebe. There are, a couple of very obvious front lines in the response to coronavirus. One, of course, is the medical, the brilliant work that's been done through our hospitals, the NHS, care providers, and so on. But the other is in food charities. And this is why we particularly wanted to hear from Phoebe. So tell us how it has been for FareShare these last 7-8 weeks or so. How have you been able to operate? Just give an example of what you used to do and what you are now doing. What's changed?
So when the virus first hit and lockdown first hit, several huge things happened at once. The demand for food went through the roof as people suddenly found themselves in a lot of insecurity, and charities that were working on the front line were feeling that. So just to explain what FareShare does, we're effectively a kind of a food wholesaler to other frontline charities. So we're not a food bank, we don't give to individuals. We source surplus food from across the food industry and give that to other charities. So those charities working on the front line felt the impact immediately. And obviously food is a very immediate need. It's not something that can wait a week. It's something that you need that day or that week in some cases. So a huge spike in demand, matched with a huge uplift in food available. So while supermarket shelves were empty in those first few weeks, there was the whole hospitality sector shut down, and there was a huge flood of catering food that destined for the hospitality sector that flooded the food industry. FareShare is the only charity with capacity to take that on any significant scale. So FareShare South West in the South West, as an independent charity, was the only organisation that could redistribute that food. So writers,
Phoebe, so going to interrupt at that point, could you give us some idea of scale when you say there's a huge flood of food or whatever? What did that look like? How did you organisationally cope with this influx?
So to give you an idea of scale, before lockdown, we were operating at about 10 tonnes a week of food. We're now operating at about 22.5 tonnes per week of food. So that's food for about 55,000 meals every week that we're redistributing, and it's going up significantly every week. So in the first few weeks, it was about getting emergency infrastructure very, very quickly. We worked from a pretty tiny warehouse in central Bristol. We quickly sourced alternative secondary warehouses. Some of you might have heard we've got a huge space at Ashton Stadium. We've been amazingly supportive. So we've got about 90 pallets of ambient non-fridge food there, that's a huge need for as food parcels is the biggest need right now. We went from a fleet of 5 chiller vans to 12 chiller vans. We sourced new equipment all under lockdown, which was a very difficult thing to do. Supply chains were broken down. Right in those first few weeks, it was, quite honestly, it was, how can we operate? We had to put a pause on operations for a few days right at the start to very quickly work out safe operating measures, because we had no choice but to grow very quickly.
Can I come in on that point? That is a transformative operational exercise. Clearly, this is a charity, and this is food, and this is a pandemic. But just managerially, that is incredibly difficult to implement in real time. I'm trying to avoid making any comparisons with the PPE and testing ramp up on a national basis, because that is exceptionally problematic. But from what you're saying, it sounds as though you were able to be extremely decisive and effective early. Is that fair? Did you feel you were doing all that you could, or was there still a lag? How did it work?
Of course, we responded extremely quickly. I think all of us are very proud of how we have responded. There was very little sleep right at the start between us. Obviously, there was no chance to employ new people or get new people on board right at the start. And of course, there was a lag as operational processes were overhauled. Our entire volunteer demographic was turned around. As people isolated, we had to tell people not to come in. But very quickly, the picture changed, and that was from support from all sides to get it underway. We had offers of chiller vans from companies that had standing stock. We had obviously a huge amount of food coming in from food suppliers. We had a volunteer base that had a lot of vulnerable people coming from support services to get back into work. A lot of those were in no position to volunteer, and we also had a lot of retired volunteers. That turned around very quickly, and we actively recruited people, a lot of people from the events industry who have been fantastic, most efficient volunteers we've ever had, who have forklift driving skills, who've got, who know how processes work. But it's been tough. You can't shift food on Zoom. It's a very tangible thing. So, making making sure, obviously, health and safety is top of our minds. So making sure we've got processes in place that are reinforced with a fast shifting volunteer base and a fast shifting picture has been a challenge throughout.
So here's the thing, another challenge for you. We've got, as mentioned, just over 120 people on this call, all disparate types of businesses and so on. What would you most wish them to do to help you, the teams and so on, be yet more effective? What can they do?
I mean, I think that the biggest thing, we completely understand this, there's companies in really difficult situations at the moment, some of whom are in no position to help. But the number one thing is staying engaged, staying with your community, really understanding what's happening out there. Because a lot of the support that we've had from local companies hasn't been through fundraising, although that's obviously vital at the moment, but has been simply through finding out what we're doing and realising that, we've actually got loads of chiller vans, they're not being used. We'll cover insurance, we'll cover fuel, it's no cost to them, and it's just a case of joining up dots. But the impact is massive. That means we can shift another ton of food out a week. That's huge. Or there's been a huge range of different offers of support that have been really helpful.
If I may, what I'd suggest perhaps to some of the companies listening to this, think laterally. Of your offering, of your contacts, of your clients, what do you have which in some way may be able to connect with FareShare and some of the logistical and practical issues, as well as, of course, financial issues that it's facing? People have been brilliant at how they've come forward. You mentioned Ashton Gate, there are many others, and we'll come to those, some of those perhaps at the end of this session. I want to move on to one other aspect for you, which has inevitably been constrained, which is fundraising. How has that been affected? What had you expected to have in pure cash terms, and what have you got? What's the shortfall likely to be this year?
Well, talking about income as a whole, a core part of the sustainability of our charity is that about half our income previously came from tiny contributions that added up to half our income from the charities we support. So they will pay a small contribution each month. A lot of those charities that we support are in no position to be paying members. They're facing all sorts of bureaucratic issues as well as financial ones. So that income-wise, about half our income was slashed overnight, and as a food organisation, we're in the spotlight where we haven't been before. But what we're looking at is the longer term impact of fundraising. I think the dynamic between us and the charities we support will change. I think we'll be stepping up that support. We might be scrapping membership fees altogether, and just reshaping how we work. So going forward, and then of course the fundraising picture going forwards is extremely uncertain across all fundraising streams. Trusts and grants have lost money themselves, endowment funds have gone down, all charities are clamouring for funding, that's the challenge that we're facing going forward.
One lovely piece of fundraising, which I'm sure many of us on this call are aware of, was the Belly Laughs session from our very good friend Mark Olver on Sunday night, which I think in aggregate across 4 charities raised about 35, even perhaps £40,000. Again, it's that sort of inventiveness. You presumably were rather pleased with that and probably quite enjoyed the evening.
It was absolutely mind-blowing. It was, it was, and again, went far beyond the fundraising. Just the feeling of the whole of Bristol coming together, so many different faces there. Having the profile raising is a huge thing for us right now, especially as we have no choice but to grow in the future. There's no going back to the size we were. It was absolutely wonderful, but also having I mean, Mark has been absolutely amazing throughout. He's just
Lovely man.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But also having local food businesses chipping in, you know, doing all sorts was absolutely incredible.
Just a quick plug, if I may. We in one of our other Media Clash cities, we're partnering with Mark for Belly Laughs in Cardiff, which is this Friday, and again it will raise money for FareShare amongst other charities. It's just a lovely example of inventiveness. Someone using their skill, in his case a comic, to make money directly for you right now, which is vital. Please, everyone listening to this, do perhaps take that point about thinking laterally. Are the ways in which you can support, because this work is absolutely vital. So Phoebe, for now, thank you very much, and we'll come back to you shortly. Thank you. Alastair, if I may bring in you. Phoebe was mentioning there about a number of volunteers, that actually those from the events industry and events sector are amongst the best, because they tend to have that sort of practical, real-time skill set and so on. But I'd like you to talk about your businesses across the piece, about how you've been affected, how many staff are furloughed, for example, what it's been like managerially with your teams in these incredibly difficult times.
Yeah, good morning, Greg. And Phoebe, that was wonderful to hear your story, and it's great to hear that hospitality are helping where they can. I think for us, it's been incredibly difficult. I think I have touch points in most areas of events within the industry, within hospitality. We have 5 principal businesses, or 4 principal businesses with a subsidiary in one. FLX, which is our lighting and sound business. It does everything from theatre to live events to conferencing, shows, etc. Everything that involves people coming together. We have Alastair Currie Events, which obviously is event planning business. Again, everything is about people coming together. Fosters Event Catering, where we have Stadia as far as Bath Rugby. We were taking on the Gloucester County Cricket contract this year. Bristol Old Vic. We just were about to open the box down in Plymouth, which is all now on hold. CMC Marquees, which is a marquee structures business, which is where I started my career in events with the marquee business back in 1982. And it's been incredibly difficult. And sorry, the one other business I missed was Hype, our agency, which is our Christmas party business, which obviously Christmas is looking fairly bleak at the moment. But I think just going back in time a few weeks, on about the 24th of February, we had a conference in London at the National Maritime Museum for HSBC. And we had a phone call from the client saying that they were pulling it with literally 24 hours notice. People flying in from China and from Singapore, etc., Hong Kong, were not coming, and the event was to be cancelled. And that to me was like the biggest flag. This was serious. This is where we really had to look at our business and business models and our people, and be very upfront that we were about to go into something very difficult. Didn't know what that was, or how it was going to transpire and what was going to happen. But I think very early on, we started communication. By about the middle of March, it was really apparent to me that this was getting very serious. It was the beginning of the chill, and action had to be taken. And it was really, in a considered way, was trying to manage our cash to make sure that we had our cash still coming in from events that had happened, but also managing our creditors and our expectations of what we're going to be able to pay. Because we didn't really see anything happening. I couldn't see any business sort of going forward beyond March. Rightly, on 23rd of March, Boris did what he had to do. Furlough kicked in. We literally, that night, I wrote to staff within SLX and ACES. Neil Lodge at Fosters, my CEO there, took on and wrote to all our Foster staff. And we ended up furloughing about 126 people on that day, keeping an absolute skeleton within the businesses to see what was going to happen. It was all about just trying to preserve the business and make our people safe first and foremost. As you can imagine, albeit I had tried to brief that was possibly what was going to happen, there's no way of sugarcoating what situation we're in as a business and businesses, and that people really had to believe in what we're saying, be resilient, and go home.
Could I ask you a personal question here? You're a highly experienced business person, multiple different types of businesses and so on. How has it been for you personally, domestically, in your middle of the night moments or whatever? How are you coping with seeing your business just sort of stop, frozen?
I think in life I've always been someone who sort of forges ahead and looks for the next opportunity. And I had to very quickly pull my head out of the sand and face up to the fact that this was not going to happen, and we had to do something. I feel very fortunate that I have been in business long enough to have gone through enough things that have affected businesses, but nothing has prepared any of us for what we're in at the moment. And to see, if we go back to me, I mean, I think it's just been incredible taking the support from my family, first and foremost, from the guys within my teams, my sort of close collaborators, shareholders, other people within business, to try and seek our way through. I've been on so many phone calls, whether we're talking about a London theatre shutting down, whether it's a catering production or whatever it has been over the last few months, just trying to manage our way through this process. I think what keeps me awake at night is just the whole magnitude of what we're in and what it looks like on the other side. I focus very much on opportunity. I think, and it's hard to believe, but out of this will come something. There will be some opportunity we'll find. We're already beginning to see some green shoots of things that could happen, things that got to start moving at some point. What that looks like, we're working on. Again, it's difficult. I will say though that when I was in March and the furlough was announced, I just thought, is this real? Can the government pull this out of the bag and deliver that level of money within a few days of the month end? And I have to say, in fairness to the government, they have delivered on the furlough, which really has been it's just one of those tick boxes. That's another thing dealt with. That's another month we cope with. And it means that we've got a bit of continuity. Our people are safe and we can keep going. The banks have been good across the board as far as support. I've just had my small business grant for Alastair Currie events in North Somerset approved today, which is a massive relief, because that business, every penny counts, and it just gives us some longevity and opportunity to explore opportunities.
By the way, I'd just like to absolutely endorse that point about the furloughing scheme. I think everyone in business was quite bowled over by how strong that furloughing scheme was from the beginning. It exceeded most expectations, and then as of yesterday, it's exceeded expectations again. Without that, it's a lifeline, it's a game changer, it's everything. That part of the government's response, personally, I suspect many of us think, has been exemplary. It should be credited. But I want to ask you about how you're seeing the rest of the year, either calendar or financial. When do you think you might, all your different businesses and so on, might have some form of trading, and what might that look like?
It's the $1 million question. I mean, taking Julian's point earlier, actually, the way I look at it, we just look at the worst case scenario. And I think doing looking at the CBIL loans for the businesses and doing a projection over I don't see us really working as a business industry again, probably till next April. And then some of it, maybe the theatre world doesn't come back until the autumn next year. I don't think we're going to, I'll come on to the sort of opportunity side of life, but I don't think we have much for Christmas this year for hype, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll have something next year. So for me, normality is probably 18 months to 2 years away of what the new normality might be. I think, really, if you take a month like May, today, we would be invoicing for the month of May around 1.5 million across the businesses. It is zero. I mean, that is the harsh reality. There is absolutely nothing happening on a commercial basis. And that will continue for, I don't know how long. And the furlough thing, the extension is an amazing thing for a business. But what's really difficult for me, if you're true to the word of furlough, when I have a resource of all those creative people sat at home, it would just be amazing to access their minds and just get some feedback from them. And to do the sort of part, the business paying someone, etc., it isn't a reality in our industry because we've got no income coming in. But we have a resource there that actually, from a volunteering point of view, can do stuff, from accessing their knowledge, their experience, their creativity. At the moment, it's just left on a few people to kind of come up with a way forward. And that, I think, if you go back to sort of me and pressure, that is a real pressure point for me. It's just trying to keep those balls in the air, being positive, keep smiling, going into the businesses and seeing people, communicating with people. It's really important.
And also, you've started thinking in terms of perhaps virtual events and what might be done such as this on a much larger scale. There may be opportunities down the line for us all, those like our business. We're very much, we're a client of yours, very much active in the events side, as many people know. It's really tough, but human creativity plus human resilience will help us get through this.
Yeah.
As well as we strongly believe the collective approach, that we really are, the old phrase, we really are all in this together, and we've got to figure a way together to get through. Alastair, I'll pause our part here. All of us, I'm sure, wish you and our other speakers all the very best in trying to navigate through this, because it is bloody hard. But we will get through it. If I can bring the other two back in, Phoebe and Julian, please. And by the way, do ask questions using the little Q&A button at the bottom, and I'll try to come to as many of those. We haven't had so many just yet, so that's okay. Let me bring them over. I wanted to ask all of you together, really, or individually, what has surprised you positively about how your teams and perhaps others have responded? Perhaps Phoebe with this first.
So I think we've just been overwhelmed with how committed people have been to supporting us. It's been absolutely outstanding. As I say, right at the start, we had no idea how we were going to operate, and we had 150 volunteers. Over half of them had to self-isolate, but the speed with which the community responded, and the speed with which we got new volunteers in who were giving, in some cases, 3 days a week of their time. And as you said before, thinking creatively, thinking outside the box, collaborating with us in all sorts of different ways has been absolutely incredible. So I'd say that's it's been so heartwarming every day. I feel very privileged to be in a space with other humans, but being in the warehouse every day and seeing people's smiling faces, can-do attitude. I think that's how other people feel as well, is just the tangibility of taking huge amounts of food out to people who desperately need it across the city. It feels like something you can do tangibly. So that's a positive for me.
Julian, on that point, where have you been surprised positively about teams, contacts and so on, how they've responded?
Well, as you know, Greg, we've got a fairly small team, so we all know each other very, very well. And we do use the word team, like a lot of people do. But I always believe we did have the team, but this has proven it, because a team working when you're winning is fairly easy to maintain. But when your back's against the wall, that's when you really can see the measure of their commitment and friendship. And we have been liaising. I get quite emotional thinking about it. Actually, we've been liaising regularly. And there are going to be days when we all have days when it's been particularly difficult for individuals. And we've been very open about that, but we've remained positive for each other. We've remained positive for our clients. And this is not a Burston Cook flag flying exercise at all. And it's been, for me, incredibly inspiring, and it's really helped motivate me to carry on and take Burston Cook forward. And as Alastair said, we don't know what the new world will be when we come through this, but we will come through this, and Burston Cook will come through this. And it may be more difficult for some years even, but I'm really pleased with the way we have stuck together, and hopefully they will reciprocate and realise how good we have been in honouring our commitment to them as well. So I'm not overly surprised, but I'm just delighted that we are working so closely together as friends and as a professional team.
Thank you. I mean, Alastair, I'm sure it'd be pretty much the same for you. I wonder if there's any specific examples where you've been, perhaps at an emotional level, but or a business level, been positively surprised by how some of your team members or clients have responded.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I send out the odd bit of communication. It's difficult with furlough because of the interaction, and I'm nervous of tripping over and doing too much, and then suddenly everything's at jeopardy. But Just the comments I've had from some of my team have just been, it's what gets me up in the morning and wants me to do what I do. I'm in SLX today, partly because I need a big system to drive a CAD program that we're drawing up some ideas for, with a couple of guys who are socially distanced, but we're just trying to come up with something. But I think the one that's really hit home was the guys at Fosters. We were approached by Food for Heroes, and Neil, the CEO there, sort of embraced it. We ended up delivering 300 to 500 meals into the NHS Southmead. An email went out on a sort of Sunday evening saying any volunteers who could come in to help support this. We were overwhelmed by guys who wanted to come in. Peter Curtis Smith, I'm going to give him a shout out because he has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he's as a front of house man, couldn't be better, and has just embraced the whole situation. And I think we've delivered something like 10,000 meals now. But what it has done for the team from a morale point of view, and actually feeling that they can serve people, which first and foremost what we do, has just been amazing to watch, and just a small contribution to the overwhelming amount of work that our NHS and key workers are doing at the moment. Phenomenal.
And just to pick up that point, on an emotional basis for anyone in a senior position within a business, this whole point is that the pandemic has been a leveller. We are all flesh and blood. We're all human beings, and we all need whatever emotional support, buoying up from our teams and so on. It is bloody important that we do that. We can all just be really open with each other and try to help, because we all need help in these times. I'll ask go from perhaps the emotional to more financial points, which is from Steve Bates. It's pretty much for each three of you, different iteration of it. As income has reduced to zero or lower than budgeted and expected, how successful have you been in reducing or deferring your non-staff costs? Perhaps Alice, you take that. You're on screen.
So just to say the end of the question again.
Yeah, how successful have you been in reducing or even deferring some of your non-staff costs?
I think because we sort of felt the chill very early on, and we're now sort of in the deep freeze, we acted very quickly in looking at all our HP agreements, all our costs across the businesses, rent, rates, insurances. Obviously our insurance policy, our liabilities are vastly reduced, so we had negotiations with our insurance companies, took vehicles off the road, just really analysed every cost, every line within our P&L to our overhead costs to get that right down. And I have to say, across the board, it's been pretty impressive what we've managed to strip out. I mean, not obviously good for our suppliers, but equally we've got the revenue coming in, and to get that cost base down has been a key element to how we will come out of this at the other end. And that's done in conjunction with your suppliers. Obviously, it's not simply just pulling up the drawbridge. Oh no, absolutely in conjunction. Communication is the absolute key, because it's a two-way street. We will need them again at the other side. So what we can do to support them between now and then, and what they can do for us, I think it's got to be a collaborative thing, and it's really important to me. Those relationships are paramount to business. That integrity and resilience is really important.
Yeah. To that point, Julian, perhaps specifically when it comes to landlords and rents in this current time, you're again right at the front line of that. How have you been advising clients, and how have you been able to reduce your own non-staff costs in this time?
As far as our own non-staff costs, I'd like to particularly thank Christina, and in particular Hayley, who have worked amazingly well, and I couldn't have done it without them. They have, right from the beginning, entered into dialogue with all our suppliers and all of our costs, and done an amazing job to some success initially. One bit of advice I would give people is that 4 weeks ago we would have a certain response from one of our suppliers, and as they're recognising the immediacy of the need to help, their policies are changing. So go back and ask again a month later, even in a month's time, because it's in their interest for us to all be coming through this. So we've had reasonable success. Interestingly, as far as our landlord is concerned, it's owned in a pension fund, and they've been a bit difficult, and they've offered us a 3-month deferment, but to pay it back at the end of the year. And I was thinking, well, you were deluded if you think at the end of the year we're going to be in much better position. So that negotiation is ongoing, but I'm confident that we will get there within the next 3 to 4 weeks. As far as advising our own clients, ranging from tenants to landlords, I've been particularly impressed by the general willingness to help the tenants, and perhaps the understanding of the tenants that but that's part of what we do, is to try and bring people together, that they understand each other's position. There's no organisation, no individual that's not massively affected by this in terms of the property industry. Mainly they've been working together and coming up with solutions. Different businesses have different needs. Some are going to come out of it better than others. So it's getting into the detail. The devil is in the detail. But you are expecting landlords to say, well, okay, I understand, but I need a little bit more proof and understanding of what your predicament is. And we're bringing that together, and we are coming up with solutions. So I couldn't give you a particular level of deal that's being agreed. Every single deal is different depending on the circumstances. But what is particularly pleasing is the fact that normally landlord and tenant is a bit of a dust up, but we're finding that they're a lot more collaborative, which is a good thing.
Thank you. And Phoebe, from an operating point of view, how successful have FareShare been in deferring costs or reducing costs to try and constrain the operation whilst revenues are so perilous?
I mean, for us, as I say, we've had to expand, so we're going the other way. So it's been fast tracking recruitment of people. It's been fundraising extremely quickly to. The easy bit is fundraising for the emergency stuff, but going forward is going to be the struggle. As I said before, there's no choice but for us to expand. There's so many, the need for food support across the region has sprung up in so many areas where people would have never seen it before. For example, elderly people who are isolating and are struggling to get out. It might not be a financial barrier, but they need that food support. Or families where both parents have suddenly lost jobs. So I think one positive thing that's come out of this has been a different discussion on food poverty. I think people start to understand why people are in positions of food poverty and understand that it's no fault of their own. But no, in terms of our operations, we're staying big, and we're planning to grow. So just this week we expanded, we expedited our expansion into Devon and Cornwall, getting food support down there. Plans for the future will continue on that line, I think, adding new warehouses, growing our staff team, redistributing more food.
Okay, thank you. And to your point about food poverty, I just want to broaden the conversation now about subsequent impact. One observation is this: that the lockdown is making everything more local. That we are all we're forced to explore our locales in the way that we haven't been previously. But more than that, we're prompted to enjoy our cities more and trade with the independent and so on. Do you buy the argument, for all three of you, this is, that one of the positives to come from this, and we bloody well need some positives, is that it will focus attention more on the independents and our cities, because we've learned to love our cities more through this period of odd deprivation?
I think, yeah.
You take that, Phil.
Shall I start? I'd say that very much so. And we've seen, we're now supporting various pop-up organisations that are based on neighbours helping neighbours. There's a lot of emergency support that is based on people looking around, talking to their street, putting notes through letterboxes, and engaging at a more local level than has ever been seen before. I'm meeting neighbours on my street that I've never met before. And I think on a wider level, in terms of local business, that there is kind of more concern and more perhaps engagement with what's happening locally. Everyone feels, I think that Belly Laughs gig really felt like that people were kind of huddling together and watching out for everyone.
And Alastair, do you buy that sort of a deeper underlying trend of venerating local?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this technology is amazing because it allows you to be local yet communicate with people in London, Edinburgh, wherever around the world. But I think from a local sourcing, supporting local, what's been lovely is some of even my friends' Instagram things where they've walked around Bristol, never been to places they've been to and taken pictures, and how stunning our city is and what it offer, the complete diversity and the mix of cultures and food and everything. It's an amazing city, and we should celebrate it more, and we should do more together, and we should support each other more within our city.
I hesitate to say anything other than absolutely so. I mean, that's what we seek to do with Bristol Life and our events, is exactly find the good stuff and celebrate it. If anything, we suspect that lockdown is going to make people even more in love with their cities. It's a sort of, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, and it's sort of been gone for a while. But when it comes back, we are going to feel a greater love, a greater enjoyment from our cities. Julian, do you buy that point? And as a proud Bristol independent, do you think, in a strange way, midterm, your sort of business might well be a beneficiary of that trend?
Seems a long way away. I think we've not seen until the businesses start to open, we've not seen it very, very clearly. But we have noticed that the smaller independents can be a little bit more quick-footed and look at ways of adapting and providing services that in terms of deliveries and so on and so forth. So the very nature of the fact that they're smaller and probably more flexible, they can do that. Interestingly, we noticed even before this that there was a move towards local restaurants and cafes and retailers anyway, which was great, particularly in Bristol, which is very much flies the flag for independence. So we did notice that previously, but of course the high street is something that's was before this time was in grave danger. And when I talk about the high street, we're talking about the Cabot Circuses, Broadmead, even the out of town cribs, and this is going to be pretty catastrophic for them, I think. So whilst it's excellent for the small local traders, we all naturally love and support, there may be some pretty awful impact on the other side of the retail sector, I'm afraid.
There's certainly going to be a sort of a rippling revolution flowing through all aspects of business, and we're right at the eye of the storm at the moment. It's really difficult to interpret what that will be. Who knows how that plays out? But again, I wanted to ask another trend underlying point. It's one of the iterations of this response to the pandemic, is that there is a softer, kinder, more careful, more thoughtful, more collaborative world as of now that's there. We've all seen the better side of good people and so on. Do you each think that will endure, or will we, perhaps through necessity, go back to conforming to pre-existing business approach?
It would be very sad, Greg, if we didn't learn something from this. As we've all touched upon, there are some positives on a basic level, on a level of nature and a level of just being and mindfulness and understanding the qualities that we have. I noticed that Alastair mentioned earlier how important it has been to have the support of his family and so on and so forth. And these things do come about, and they make you much more aware of really what is important. And I think there will be some great positive things that will come from it from a lot of people. I think on a business level, some people will forget, and they'll get out there and probably out of need, get out there and make it happen again. I just hope that we all learn something from it, if not as businesses, but certainly personally.
And I suspect it's probably the case as well that people will remember the good acts and thoughtfulness in these difficult times. Have people had it's a terrible phrase, a good war? Have they behaved responsibly and thoughtfully, civically? And I want to end in that area. If I'd like to bring in Alastair on this point about this idea of recognising the good that people are doing, pushing, in our case, the hashtag Bristol Together, Some thoughts here on the bigger perspective, Alastair, in terms of the other bodies that you've been talking with about the enduring values and the good that people are doing.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate and privileged to see a lot that goes on in Bristol. One of my roles is I'm a merchant venturer. We have a number of schools and old people's homes, as well as supporting young people throughout the city. And it's just been overwhelming, the contribution that teachers have made to make sure that the kids at the schools have had food. The care workers in the elderly and old people's homes, etc., have just gone over and above to ensure that their residents are safe. It's just been phenomenal. I also sit on the development committee for the Prince's Trust South West, and we had a conference call last week. And obviously, it was hard enough before this to give enough support to young people in Bristol who are either starting their business or fallen on hard times. The old Fairbridge model of really getting people off the streets and back into accommodation and some form of employment and putting their lives back. You know, I think going back to your earlier question, we've got a lot of pain to come, and it's going to be very difficult. We are in the calm of the storm at the moment. We're sort of in a hibernation. The thaw is going to come. What that looks like with employment and people and jobs, it's going to put an enormous further pressure on society. And I hope the goodwill that has been generated during this period will continue, and that people just take a little bit more time for each other, because the wellness of what we're all going through is going to be really difficult, and it will come out at some point. I mean, I feel like I'm living in a bubble. It's like I'm in one of the biggest events of my life, and I know it's going to come to an end, and I'm going to have the blues at some point, and it will hit me. And my wife Helen can acknowledge that. She knows when I come back from a big gig, it takes a day or two for me to get back into family life. This is the biggest gig of my life, from the point of view of what I have to do for the businesses, for people, for friends, for family, and it will have its toll at some point. And I think we all need to be respectful of that. And I really hope that that happens at the other end.
Alastair, I absolutely admire what you're saying and the candour with which you're saying it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Phoebe, some closing thoughts in this area about the good that people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I reiterate what both of you have said. I think we've all had a chance to take a moment and remember what's important, and what can be lost if we don't protect it. And I think not only, I think people will remember those moments where they felt supported. Alastair, you're talking about Fosters providing food to the NHS. My partner is an intensive care doctor in the BRI, and he's eaten your food on a bad day in PPE and felt supported. And it's those little tangible acts of kindness that people will look back on when this is all over, when we're not worried about the things we're worried about now. I think, I mean, in terms of acts of kindness that we've seen at FareShare, it's just been, I'd love to write a massive list of them, but the things that stand out are those very human actions of people going above and beyond to care for those around them.
Very lovely. I think that is a great point to end on. We're nearly done. I'll just pick up your phrase there, Phoebe. Tangible acts of kindness. What a lovely phrase. And the more, one, that we are all doing, but two, that we are sharing and getting out there the fact that even in the toughest of times, people are showing their best is really important. On your behalf, all of you, I would like to thank our panellists today, Julian, Phoebe and Alastair. Also, of course, thanks to our business club sponsor, Bevan Britain, and to all of you for your time today, and apologies we weren't able to get to all of the questions we had. Please look out for our next business club. We'll be emailing the social media doing that shortly. But we're also launching a new thing as well, which is business surgeries. It's the same structure in that it's a free webinar, but this is in practical business advice areas. There's two that we're lining up. One is about financial planning, all aspects of that, budgeting of cash flows, of the resources that are out there, the loans, etc. And two is legal and HR, what we as business owners have to do and what employees can do in these difficult times. That trying to navigate the legal and financial area is so difficult for us all. Hence, opening up these business surgeries, and we'd be delighted to talk with senior practitioners in either area to help the other businesses in Bristol to navigate through. We know there can't be any return to normal partly because, to be honest, it looks as though normal was part of the problem in the first place. But in these bewildering, unimagined times, it is clear that enduring good can come from this. It's up to us to make sure that it does. In the worst of times, people are showing their best, and we should be proud of this city. We've heard some hint of it today. We're seeing it, daily, hourly, all the time. There's good people doing great things out there. This new world, however, even modestly, it may be better in parts than where we've come from, and however difficult it will be to get there. So yes, these are tough times, and there will be tougher times to come, but this too shall pass. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been the Bristol Life Business Club as we've never had one before. Thank you. Bristol Together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.